There are places that don't want to be found. They exist on the edges of maps, in the quiet spaces between roads and rivers, forgotten by time. Some say these places are cursed, dark pockets of the world where the air feels thick, where the silence stretches just a little too long. I never believed in things like that. Not until I found myself standing on an abandoned stretch of train tracks, staring into the darkness, knowing something was staring back. This isn't just a story, it's a warning, because what I saw that night was never meant to be seen, and I was never meant to leave alive. It all started because of graffiti. I've been tagging for years, always looking for new places to leave my mark. I wasn't after fame or anything, just loved the way the paint felt in my hands, the way colors popped against rusted metal and forgotten walls. It was my escape. That night, I was searching for something different, something untouched. I spent hours scrolling through satellite images, looking for abandoned buildings, empty overpasses, anywhere the world had left behind. That's when I found it, a forgotten train yard. It was on the outskirts of town, buried behind thick trees and rusted fences, the kind of place no one had used in decades. The tracks stretched on for miles, half buried under dirt and weeds, leading to a cluster of old boxcars sitting in the dark like sleeping giants. No tags, no footprints, nothing. It was perfect. I told my friend Theo about it the next day. He wasn't into graffiti, but he liked coming along for the ride. We had a routine. He'd smoke, I'd paint, and we'd waste the night talking about nothing. So that evening, just after midnight, we climbed the fence and made our way to the tracks. The place was even more eerie in person. The boxcars loomed overhead, their steel bodies rusted and peeling. Some of the doors were open just enough to see inside, dark, empty spaces that felt like they were waiting for something. Theo took a long drag from his blunt and exhaled into the cold night air. "Man, this place is creepy as hell," he muttered, like something out of a horror movie. I laughed it off and shook my can of paint, the rattle breaking the silence. "It's perfect. No one comes out here." That was my first mistake. I started on the first boxcar, laying down wide, sweeping strokes of color. The paint hissed softly as I worked, filling the empty space with something alive. For a while, everything felt normal. The only sounds were the occasional shuffle of Theo's feet, the distant hoot of an owl, and the soft click of my spray can. Then I heard it, a metallic clang. I froze mid-stroke. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Somewhere down the tracks. I turned to Theo, who was leaning against the car, eyes half closed. "You hear that?" I asked. He exhaled a slow breath. "Probably just an animal." I nodded, but my gut told me otherwise. I glanced down the tracks. The darkness felt heavier now, pressing in at the edges of my vision. But there was nothing there. I went back to painting. Another clang, this time closer. Theo stood up straight. "Okay, that was not an animal." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, making the boxcars creak. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to shake it off. Then something rolled past my foot. A paint can. Not one of mine. It came from further down the tracks. Theo cursed under his breath, and before we could react, a voice broke the silence. Low, rough, a warning. "You need to leave." I turned, heart hammering, scanning the darkness. The voice had come from the shadows beyond the last boxcar. But there was no one there. I opened my mouth to call out, to demand who was there, but Theo grabbed my arm, his fingers dug into my sleeve. "We're leaving, now." For once, I didn't argue. We turned and walked quickly back toward the fence, trying not to break into a full sprint. But before we reached it, a gunshot, loud, sharp. It echoed through the empty train yard, ripping through the silence like a blade. We ran. We never called the cops, never told anyone, just tried to forget about it. But I couldn't. For weeks, I dreamed about that voice, about the paint can rolling toward my foot, about the way the boxcars seemed to shift in the darkness, as if something was moving inside them. I had to go back. I told myself it was just curiosity. I wanted to see if someone had covered up my work, maybe left another warning. But deep down, I think I already knew the truth. Something was waiting for me. I went during the day alone. The place felt different under the sun, but not safer. The boxcars still loomed, rusted and massive, their doors slightly ajar like open mouths. I walked slowly, carefully, until I reached the last car. The door was wide open. Inside was empty, except for a single chair in the center. Ropes and chains lay scattered around it, and the whole place reeked of bleach. My stomach twisted. I stepped back, my pulse hammering in my ears. That's when I heard it, the metallic clang. Closer this time. I turned and ran. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I was back in my car, hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. That night, I got a message from an unknown number. Don't come back. I never told Theo, never told anyone. But a few months later, I saw something on the news. A body had been found in the woods near the old tracks. It was badly decomposed, but they confirmed it was a man in his 40s. No ID, no missing persons report, just gone. They ruled it a homicide. I don't know who he was. I don't know if he was the one who warned me. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder, did I escape, or was I just lucky enough to leave before it was my turn? Some places don't want to be found, and some secrets should stay buried. I learned that the hard way, and I'll never go looking again.